Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we have one of the most strategic documents you can probably imagine. It's a highly detailed map for a specific academic discipline.
It really is.
We're diving deep into the teaching guide for the Sandy 12 Commerce IT 99 exam.
And this isn't just a syllabus, it's more like an intelligence report. Think of this source material as an X-ray of exactly what knowledge is prioritized when you blend information technology, commerce, and practical accounting concepts.
And our mission for you is to turn this academic blueprint into a strategic advantage. It tells us not just what topics are covered, but how they need to be known.
Yeah.
The whole paper is 80 marks.
Right.
And the split is deliberate. It's a rigorous test of theoretical concepts, blended seamlessly with some serious hands-on practical application.
That fusion right there, the mandatory ability to both explain the theory and then, demonstrate the code, that is the single most important takeaway. The guide basically confirms that modern commerce fluency demands, dual citizenship in both business process and digital infrastructure.
So if we start by just looking at the sheer scope, it's remarkably broad.
Oh, it's incredibly interdisciplinary. The material pulls from 5 major, pretty distinct domains. You've got organization and management, web technology, specifically HTML and CSS.
A deep dive there.
A very deep dive. Then database design, accounting software principles, and the entire landscape of e-commerce.
What I find so striking is how little segregation there is. These aren't just 5 topics sitting next to each other. They seem to be treated as one kind of integrated expertise.
Exactly.
We're talking about dedicated sections covering things like database keys, ERP, that's enterprise resource planning.
Which manages all the core business processes.
Right, and then SEO, search engine optimization, which drives web traffic. And all of that is sitting right next to detailed functional knowledge of digital accounting vouchers.
And that integration is the genius of the curriculum. It recognizes that in any modern business, these elements are completely inseparable.
You can't pull them apart.
You can't. And analyzing the weighting and the types of questions shows us exactly where those conceptual bridges are. Like, why does the exam test your knowledge of how to structure a database at the same time it tests e-commerce strategy?
Well, because you can't have a functional e-commerce platform without a solid database behind it. It's just impossible.
Exactly. So the guide confirms this isn't just about passing an exam, it's about validating a foundational fluency in the actual tech infrastructure you need to run a business today. Understanding this structure gives you a shortcut to seeing where the most essential work really needs to be done.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's look at that first conceptual bucket, what I'm calling the precision test.
Good name for it.
These are the questions that demand surgical accuracy. Starting with Q1, fill in the blanks. 10 marks. It's pure recall. The source is adamant this section demands perfect rote recall of definitions and keywords.
Across everything.
Across everything. Web tech, accounting, database.
It's the gatekeeper test. I mean, if you don't have the exact established technical term, you just lose the mark. There's zero tolerance for getting it sort of right.
And that really mirrors the accuracy you need in, say, actual accounting, right?
Yeah.
A single misclassified item can throw the whole thing off.
Absolutely. And that demand for detail just gets more intense in Q2. True or false, also 10 marks. The guide gives a very specific warning here that caught my eye. It says, even one wrong word can make the statement false.
That is a high bar.
It's an extremely high bar. It's the ultimate high stakes section. The guide gives a fantastic example of the precision needed. You have to know the exact difference between the terms hyperlink and hypertext.
Oh.
So if the statement refers to the non-linked content when it means the clickable element, boom, it's false. You have to understand the function of every component so deeply that you can instantly spot a single word change that alters the truth.
So it's not just memory, it's context.
Right.
That's fascinating. After that, we have Q3, the straightforward, multiple choice questions, single correct answer, another 10 marks.
Right.
And this seems to cover e-commerce basics, fundamental HTML tags, CSS properties, and forms. And the guide's tip is pretty simple. Eliminate the wrong options first.
It's careful reading plus quick recall. We're moving from just knowing the vocabulary in Q1 to actually applying the definitions in Q3.
Okay, so we've established that precision is key for those one-mark recall questions.
Right.
But the guide shows that real mastery is tested when you move from that single point of precision to multifaceted judgment. This is where it gets really interesting.
What's fascinating here is the weighting.
You're talking about Q4. The MCS with 2 correct answers. A massive 20 marks. That's a quarter of the entire paper's weight in one question type.
It is. And a question worth 20 marks demands a different kind of knowledge. It's asking for balanced, sophisticated thinking. It's testing managerial judgment. Well, for example, it doesn't just ask for an advantage of e-commerce. It requires you to select 2 correct advantages and 2 correct disadvantages.
Oh, I see.
This tests your ability to evaluate business risk and reward at the same time, which is a core skill in the digital age.
So it's not enough to be a good coder. You also have to be able to explain why an e-commerce venture might fail or what the biggest security risks are. That's a huge jump from filling in a blank.
A massive jump.
Yeah.
And you also see nuanced topics here, like understanding complex database relationships, one-to-many versus many-to-many, and specific HTML tags for things like nested lists or image maps.
And the stakes aren't just about gaining points, but the penalties. The guide really stresses this rule. Don't select more than 2. Wrong selection equals marks lost.
Which means you need genuine confidence, no guesswork.
No guessing allowed.
And that precision continues in Q5. These are the MCQs requiring 3 correct answers for 6 marks. This tests extremely specific component-level knowledge.
I was struck by how specific this has to be, like knowing the precise components of the GSTIN structure. Why single out the goods and services tax identification number specifically?
That's a great question. GSTI knowledge is critical for compliance and digital auditing in commerce. It's a 15-digit code, and you need to know which digits mean what. The state code, the PAN number, the check digits.
So by testing this, they're ensuring you understand the legal and technical backbone of digital transactions.
Yes. They're validating that you can perform accurate administrative tasks inside an ERP system.
The progression is so clear. Q1 asks if you know the word, Q4 asks if you get the pros and cons, and Q5 asks if you know the internal legal components of the system itself.
Exactly. Then you have Q6, match the following. A quick 4 marks. It's a classic pairing test match, the technical term with its correct use.
The strategy there is just about confidence, I imagine. Match the ones you know for sure first.
And use elimination for the rest. Then we get to Q7, answer briefly. This is the first time the student gets to really demonstrate structured explanation. 10 marks, short answers, usually 2 or 3 points per question.
And the topics here demand a real process-based understanding. Things like explaining the function of an iframe.
Which is so essential for embedding things like maps or videos into a web page.
Or detailing the steps in the accounting software process, or the trade cycle. It also requires you to be clear on modern business concepts, like the different types of SEO.
Black hat, white hat, gray hat.
Right, and explaining the operational difference between encryption and decryption.
You know, the format guidance for Q7 might be the most telling part. They explicitly ask students to use headings and points and diagrams where possible.
Which tells you what the assessors value.
It tells you they prioritize structured, scannable explanations. They want to see that you can organize complex information clearly, which is, a core professional skill.
So this whole progression from definition to judgment to structured explanation brings us to the final, and I'd argue most important, bucket. Applied skill.
Yeah.
QAA and QAB.
Yeah.
Together, they're 10 marks, and they emphasize that theory alone is not enough. You have to show you can code.
This is where the rubber meets the road. Q8A, the HTML program section, is 5 marks, and it asks you to build a complex HTML form.
And not just any form. They're looking for specific elements that mimic real-world data entry. They require specific input types, text boxes, an email field, a number input.
And crucially, they must know how to make a field mandatory using the required attribute.
Which is vital in the real world. You can't have people submitting forms without their email address. It's about data integrity.
Exactly. So your marks depend entirely on using the right tags, like form and input, and specifying the correct type attributes. If you use a simple text input where an email input is needed, you lose points because the form validation won't work.
That level of detail is everything. And then Q8B, the HTML plus CSS program, is the final 5-mark skill check.
This is where you have to separate structure from design. The required structure has to include both ordered and unordered lists.
But the real test here is the CSS styling and the layout. You need to apply properties like color and font family, but the most sophisticated part is the layout. Using either the older float method or the more modern flex to create page divisions, like a left and right sidebar.
This is so crucial. By requiring knowledge of both float and flex, the guide is testing the student's adaptability.
How do you mean?
Well, float is a legacy method. It can be tricky for layout, but flex, or Flexbox, is the modern standard for creating responsive, flexible layouts that work on desktops and mobile devices.
So if you can properly use Flex in your answer, you're demonstrating a core skill for building any modern website. You're proving you can build the infrastructure that modern business needs.
That's it, exactly.
So what does this all mean for the person studying this, or for anyone just trying to understand the field? If we pull this whole guide together, we get a very clear roadmap.
A very clear one. The guide boils it all down into 4, I'd say, non-negotiable directives. First, learn definitions and keywords religiously. That builds your foundation of precision for Q1 and Q2.
Second, practice MCQs daily, especially the multi-correct ones. That's for Q3, Q4, and Q5. It trains the speed and judgment you need for those high-stakes, multifaceted answers.
Third, and this is the most hands-on part, practice HTML programs on a computer. That applied skill is non-negotiable for Q8. You cannot pass a programming test just by reading about code. You have to build that muscle memory.
And finally, you have to remember those specific CSS properties and deeply understand the core concepts of accounting and e-commerce. That's what lets you move from coding to structured explanation for Q6 and Q7.
It just confirms that mastery in this field requires, well, it's not just recall. It's precise language, quick judgment on complex trade-offs, and fundamentally demonstrable applied coding skills.
You can't be half-informed. The exam demands comprehensive fluency.
That's right.
We've used this single exam blueprint as a lens, really, to reveal this balanced demand, from the conceptual depth needed to list e-commerce disadvantages, all the way down to the highly technical specific knowledge of legal components like the GSTI and the practical ability to use modern code like Flex.
Indeed. The requirement to synthesize such distinct topics, combining complex, responsive HTML layouts with the legal and functional nuances of digital accounting vouchers, that is a direct reflection of the skill set needed for the modern digital marketplace.
It proves you understand not just what commerce is, but how it operates.
At a fundamental technological level, yes.
And that leaves us with one final thought for you to chew on. If the syllabus requires proficiency in both the older float method and the modern Flex standard for web page design, what does that immediate demand for knowledge of shifting technologies indicate about the fastest moving frontier in this entire field? The constant evolution of code means that fluency in commerce increasingly means adaptability in the infrastructure that supports it.